All right, so as we wait on the president in Granite City, Illinois, we've got two major developments at this hour to tell you about in the U.S.-China tariff battle royale that seems to be setting up for a much longer collision course than first anticipated. China killed a major deal overnight between smartphone chip giant Qualcomm and NXP, making the two tech companies the latest casualties in the ongoing dispute between the U.S. and China. Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf saying in an interview with CNBC the NXP deal got, quote, caught up in a trade war. Blunt, that's what he said. But the stock, you see, is up 7%, in part because he also said this won't stop Qualcomm's appetite for new acquisitions. They're still forging ahead. So while Qualcomm may have put on a brave face, Senator Marco Rubio was furious. He immediately renewed calls to sanction Chinese telecom giant ZTE, expressing via Twitter that long-term China is a bigger threat to America's security than Russia, adding, when are we going to take it seriously? James Roberts served 25 years in the U.S. State Department and is now one of the Heritage Foundation's lead experts on economic freedom. James, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer came out swinging today, saying China is a longer-term problem than any other trade battle we're facing. How have these latest developments affected the current trade war with China? Are they worse now?
Well, I think we've really set the table here with the agreement with the European Union, which is really a recognition by the Trump administration that trade is mutually beneficial. We're glad to see the agreement to restart talks heading towards zero tariffs and non-tariff barriers. And we hope the Heritage Foundation proposal to start with intermediate goods of the non-auto sector is one of the first things they start with zero tariffs. And if you remember yesterday, the news conference between President Trump and Juncker, the president ran down a list of countries that are abusing the World Trade Organization rules, stealing intellectual property, unfair trade practices, and that was all aimed at China. They didn't name China. It's interesting that the two items, the two products that the two sides announced yesterday, both had really overtones. One, liquefied natural gas, is aimed at Russia, and then the soybeans is directly aimed at China, which has gone after our soybean producers, making it uncomfortable, causing the president to say we should spend even more taxpayer money to subsidize farmers, But
John, I'm just wondering if the point, and it wasn't the whole point, but the point of having a breakthrough with the European Union was in part just to show China, well, look, we got European Union countries to kind of bend here. The Chinese came out in the past couple of hours and said, we will match any and all tariffs that the U.S. slaps on us. Is that just whistling past the graveyard by the Chinese, or do they really mean it?
It could be. They could be really talking tough. Nobody really knows what's going on in China because it's so non-transparent. The state-owned companies, no one really knows their financial condition. I think the Chinese are a lot weaker than they would think. And I think if the U.S. Takes the same positive attitude on trade to Japan and Korea, which was part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Japan was, that would that would isolate China. And if we can also, the NAFTA agreement, the NAFTA trade ministers are meeting today. If we could get a new NAFTA quickly that even has an energy chapter and investment settlement dispute mechanisms that are retained, I mean, those would all be good things. Those would all send signals to China that the U.S. is mending its fences. Maybe, we at Heritage thought that this was an ill-thought-out trade war to begin with.
Anyway,
managed trade, we don't think it just really brings us back to where we were a couple of years ago with the Europeans. But nevertheless, we're back there, which is a good thing. Let's hope that the new president of Mexico pushes an agreement on NAFTA 2.0 at the same time. James, and then China maybe will get the message.
Maybe. James, we had asked our viewers the other day, which is more dangerous to U.S. national security, a Mercedes-Benz or ZTE, the Chinese phone company, and maybe one of their phones. Senator Rubio can basically say, I told you so. Last Friday, he ripped the decision by the U.S. to lift the ban on U.S. suppliers selling tech equipment to ZTE. He said that ZTE should be put out of business. They have violated sanctions and trade against Iran. Did the U.S. really think that by lifting the sanctions on ZTE last week, simply because the Chinese whined and cried saying jobs were lost, that there might be some sort of understanding that they'd play nice with us? Because they didn't. They rejected the Qualcomm NXP deal.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that development, and certainly when it comes to our national security and what our intelligence agencies are telling our government leaders, That's really in a different category, and certainly we have to pursue that as a country, I think, to protect ourselves. But nevertheless, with these other trade tariffs that have been imposed, I think it's time to recognize, and as it looks like the administration has done, and they've certainly heard a lot of pushback from many parts of the American economy that have been damaged by these tariffs, that we've got to rethink this. We've got to go back to our friends, our trading partners and allies and investment partners, and just kind of turn the page and let's get forward looking on ending this trade war.